Commander Lee Hannah rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the glowing screens in the deep space monitoring station. She had been working for 14 hours straight, but sleep was impossible. For 3 months now, something strange had been happening. In the dark space between the stars, the first signal came on a Tuesday morning. Hannah was drinking her coffee when the computer started making noise. At first, she thought it was just space junk, or maybe a broken satellite. But when she looked at the data, her hands started shaking. The signal was not random. It was organized. It was a message. "Park Jisoo, come look at this," she called to her assistant. Jisoo was young and smart, fresh out of the academy. He walked over to Hannah's station and looked at the screen. "What am I looking at, Commander?" he asked. "Listen," Hannah said, and pressed a button. The speakers filled with a sound like wind through broken glass. But underneath the static, there was something else. Something that sounded almost like voices. "Is that ... are those words?" Jisoo whispered. Hannah nodded. "The computer says it's a language, but not any language we know." Over the next few days, more signals came. Each one was different, but they all had the same feeling of panic. The voices in the static sounded scared. It sounded like they were running from something. Dr. Kim Woo was their language expert. He was a quiet man who spent most of his time alone with his computers, trying to understand alien mathematics and symbols. When Hannah brought him the recordings, his face went pale. "Commander," he said after listening for an hour, "these are not from one species. These are from hundreds of different species, maybe thousands. What are they saying?" Hannah asked. Kim Woo was quiet for a long time. "They are warning each other about something. Something they call the whispers. Every message is the same. They're telling other ships to stay away from certain parts of space." "What parts?" Hannah asked. "The parts near Earth." The room went silent. Hannah felt cold suddenly, like someone had opened a door to space itself. "That's impossible," Jisoo said. "No one knows about Earth. We have never contacted anyone." But Kim Woo shook his head. "Commander, they know our planet's name. They know where we are. And they are afraid of us." Over the following weeks, the signals got stronger. The station's computers worked day and night to decode the messages. Each translation made the mystery deeper and more frightening. The aliens were not just afraid of Earth, they were terrified. Their messages spoke of something called the Silencers beings that had once brought darkness to the galaxy. According to the messages, humans were the children of these Silencers, the descendants of monsters that had destroyed entire civilizations. "Look at this," Kim Woo said one evening, pointing to a screen. "This message is from a species called the Zentari. They are warning their colonies to watch for ships from the Death Planet. That's what they call Earth." Another message came from silicon-based life forms near the galactic center. They spoke of the quiet ones who had made whole star systems go silent. They said these beings looked like humans. "But we've never left our solar system," Hannah said. "How can they know about us?" "Maybe," Kim Woo said quietly. "Some of us did leave, long time ago." The most disturbing message came from a species that called themselves the Harmony. Their transmission was different from the others. Instead of panic, it carried a tone of deep sadness. "The children of the Silencers sleep," the message said, "but the whispers grow strong again. Soon the galaxy will remember why we learned to fear the sound of silence." Hannah stood at the observation window, looking out at the stars. Each point of light might be home to billions of living beings. And somewhere out there, they were all talking about her planet. They were all afraid of her species, Commander Jisoo said from behind her. "There's something else. Computer has been tracking the source of the signals. They're not random. They're all coming from the same direction." "Which direction?" Hannah asked. "The galactic core." "The signals are getting stronger." "Whatever's out there, it's moving toward us." That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She walked through the empty corridors of the station, thinking about the messages. Somewhere in the dark between stars, ancient enemies were stirring, and for reasons she couldn't understand, they were connected to Earth. She returned to her station and played the recordings again. In the static and alien voices, she heard something that made her blood turn to ice. Hidden in the background of every message, so quiet she had almost missed it, was another sound. Whispering, something was whispering in the void between the words. And as she listened closer, she realized the whispers were in a language she recognized. They were in English. The whispers were saying the same thing over and over. "We are coming home." Ambassador Choi Min-ho had dreamed of this moment his whole life. First contact with alien civilizations. He had imagined handshakes, maybe even parades. He had not imagined being locked in a metal room with guards outside the door. The Galactic Council ship was massive, bigger than any human city. When they arrived to take him from Earth, Minho thought it was a mistake. The aliens didn't come in peace. They came with weapons pointed at his planet. "Will come with us," the alien captain had said through the translator. "Your species must answer for what you are." Now Minho sat in what he could only call a prison cell, waiting to be judged for crimes he didn't understand. His assistant, Dr. Bae-sumin, sat across from him, reading through files on her tablet. Her face was white with fear. "Ambassador," she whispered, "you need to see this." The files were in dozens of alien languages, but the computer had translated them. Each file had the same header: silencer spawn, protocols, and Earth species containment procedures. "They've been watching us," Suman said, "for thousands of years. Look at these dates. The oldest files were from before human civilization began. Ancient records from species that had died out long ago. All of them contained warnings about Earth and its inhabitants. Dangerous beyond measure, read one file. The silencer bloodline must never be allowed to spread again." Another file from a species called the Builders contained detailed star charts. Earth was marked with a red symbol that the computer translated as "Cursed World Approach Forbidden." "Did we do?" Minho asked. "We've never even left our solar system." "Maybe we have," Suman said quietly. "Maybe some of us did, long ago." The door to their cell opened with a hiss. 2 guards entered, followed by a tall, thin alien with silver skin and 3 eyes. The translator device on the wall crackled to life. "I am Keeper Vex," the alien said. "I am here to prepare you for your hearing before the council." "What are we accused of?" Minho asked. "Existing," Vex replied. "Your species carries the genetic markers of the silencers. You're their descendants." "But we don't know what that means," Minho protested. Vex made a sound like broken glass. "It might have been laughter." "Of course you don't." They made sure of that. The silencers were clever. They hid their true nature even from their own children. Vex activated a holographic display in the center of the room. Da-da-da-da! Images appeared in the air, star maps, ancient battles, and creatures that looked almost human, but wrong somehow. 50,000 years ago, Vex explained, the galaxy was different. There were thousands of civilizations. Trade routes connected every corner of known space. It was a golden age. The images showed beautiful cities on distant worlds, ships traveling between stars, and beings of all shapes and sizes working together. Then, the silencers came, Vex continued. They arrived from the outer rim, from a small blue world that most had never heard of. At first, they seemed peaceful. They said they wanted to help. The images changed. Now they showed the same beautiful cities, but empty, silent, dead. They brought the whispers with them, Vex said. Wherever they went, civilizations fell silent. Not destroyed, just silent. Billions of minds went quiet. All at once? That's impossible, Suman said. As humans can't do that. These humans could, Vex replied. They had abilities your current species has forgotten. They could reach into minds across space. They could make entire planets stop thinking. The hologram showed the final battle. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species fighting against a much smaller human fleet. The human ships were strange, covered in symbols that hurt to look at. We fought them for 1,000 years, Vex said. Finally, we won. But the cost was everything. Most of our civilizations never recovered. Survivors scattered to the edges of the galaxy. What happened to the silencers? Minho asked. They vanished, Vex said. Some say they died. Others believe they went into hiding. A few think they returned to their home world and forgot what they had been. And you think we're them? Minho asked. I know you are, Vex said. The genetic scans are clear. You carry their DNA, their memories. Sleep in your blood. As the hologram changed again. Now it showed recent images, the deep space signals that had been detected, the whispers in the void, and something moving in the darkness between stars. Oh. The whispers are returning, Vex said. After 50,000 years, they are waking up, and they are calling to their children. We're not responsible for what our ancestors did, Minho said. Perhaps not, Vex agreed. But you are the only ones who can stop what is coming. The Council must decide if you are humanity's salvation or humanity's doom. The guards stepped forward, indicating it was time to go. As they left the cell, Vex turned back to them. The hearing begins in 1 hour, he said. I suggest you prepare to convince the Council that your species deserves to live. Because if you cannot, they will sterilize your world before the whispers can use you. Minho felt his legs go weak. Outside their cell, alarms were beginning to sound throughout the ship. The whispers were coming, and the galaxy was about to remember why they had learned to fear the children of Earth. Dr. Yoon-gyo knelt in the red dust of a dead world, her hands shaking as she brushed dirt from an ancient metal surface. Planet had no name in any star chart. The aliens just called it Silent World 7. One of many planets that had simply stopped talking to the galaxy 50,000 years ago. Professor Nam, come look at this, she called to her colleague. Nam Taeon was 20 meters away, carefully digging around what looked like a massive door buried in the ground. The archaeological mission had been Earth's idea. If humanity was going to stand trial for ancient crimes, they needed to know what really happened. The Galactic Council had given them permission to visit one silent world, but only under heavy guard. What did you find? Nam asked, walking over to Gaho's excavation site. It's a data storage device, she said, holding up a black cube covered in symbols. But look at these markings. Some of them are almost like ancient Korean characters. Took the cube and studied it. That's impossible. Korean writing's only a few thousand years old. Maybe Korean came from something older, Geo suggested. Maybe our ancestors brought language with them when they left Earth. They had been digging for 3 days. The planet's surface was covered in the ruins of a great city, but everything was perfectly preserved. No wind, no rain, no time seemed to have touched this place. It was as if the world had been frozen at the moment of its death. Dr. Yoon called Lee Min-jun, their junior researcher. We've got the main archive open. The team gathered around the massive door that Nam had been excavating. It was made of some metal that didn't exist on Earth, covered in warning symbols. In dozens of languages, when they shined their lights through the opening, they could see a vast chamber beyond. The air is breathable, reported their guide, an alien soldier named Crix, but I'm detecting strange energy readings. This place is still active. They descended into the archive carefully. The chamber was enormous, with walls that stretched up into darkness. Every surface was covered in glowing panels that showed images, text, and symbols from across the galaxy. Beautiful, whispered Geo. It's terrifying, Crix corrected. This is a memory vault. The last people to die here recorded everything they knew before the silencers came. Connected her tablet to one of the panels. The translation software began working immediately, and slowly the true story began to emerge. This is incredible, she said, reading from her screen. These aren't records of destruction, they're records of cooperation. The images on the walls came alive as the archive responded to their presence. Holographic displays showed the galaxy as it had been, connected, peaceful, and full of life. But there was something else in the images, something that made Gaho's skin crawl. Look at this, Nam said, pointing to a display showing star charts. There's something moving between the star systems, something that isn't supposed to be there. Archive began to play a recording. The voice that spoke was calm, but underneath it was a fear that made everyone in the chamber go quiet. Final entry, Coalition Archive 7, the voice said. The entity has broken through our defenses in the core worlds. It speaks to us in the silence between thoughts. It promises peace, but its peace is death. More recordings played automatically. Different voices, different languages, but all telling the same story. Something had come from outside the galaxy. Something that lived in the empty space between stars and fed on the minds of thinking beings. The whispers, Crick said quietly. They're talking about the whispers. No, Geo said, studying the translation. The whispers are what this thing does. It whispers to you in the dark parts of your mind. It tells you to give up, to stop fighting, to be silent forever. The archive showed the galaxy's response. Every species working together, building weapons and defenses that seemed impossible. And at the center of it all were humans. Not as conquerors, but as partners. The humans came to help, Nam said in amazement. They didn't bring destruction. They brought hope. The recordings showed the truth. Early humans had left Earth not to conquer, but to join a great alliance. They had special abilities. They could think in ways that the entity couldn't understand. Where other species heard the whispers and went mad, humans heard them and stayed sane. They called themselves the Silencers, Geo read from another. Display, because they could create zones of absolute quiet where the entity could not reach. They were the galaxy's immune system against a cosmic infection. The final recordings were the hardest to watch. The last battle had been won, but the cost was terrible. The entity was trapped, but it required constant vigilance. Someone had to stay behind to maintain the prison that held it. The humans volunteered, Crick said, his voice filled with wonder. They stayed to guard the galaxy. But what happened to them? Nam asked. The answer came from the final message in the archive. A human voice, speaking in ancient Korean, recorded. Moments before the system went silent. We have bound the thing that whispers, the voice said, but we cannot destroy it. Our children will carry this burden. We have changed them, made them into living locks. They will forget what they are, but when the time comes, they will remember. The survivors, Geo realized. The ones who lived through the war. They were so traumatized that they forgot the truth. They only remembered humans bringing silence. And death. The archive began to shut down, its power finally exhausted after 50,000 years. But as the lights dimmed, one final message appeared on the walls. The prison weakens. The whispers grow strong. The children of the Silencers must remember who they are, or all will be lost. As they climbed back to the surface, Geo understood the terrible truth. Humanity wasn't the galaxy's nightmare. They were its sleeping guardians, and something was trying to wake them up. Captain Kong Minseok gripped the sides of his command chair as the ship shook violently. The Soul's Pride was humanity's fastest warship, but it felt like a toy being thrown around by an angry child. Outside the windows, space itself seemed to be bending and twisting in ways that hurt to look at. Captain, called Lieutenant Oyuna. From the communications station, we're getting reports from all over the galaxy. Entire star systems are going dark. Minseok had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. 3 weeks ago, everything had been normal. Now, civilization was falling apart at the speed of light. Show me the tactical. Display, he ordered. The main screen filled with a map of the galaxy. Red zones spread across it like a disease, marking areas where all communication had stopped. The pattern was clear. Something was moving outward from the galactic core, consuming everything in its path. Sir, reported Chief Engineer Seo Hunwoo over the intercom. The crew is asking questions. They want to know why we're not affected. Like the alien ships? It was true. Every alien vessel they had encountered was dead in space, its crew either unconscious or worse. The few survivors they had rescued all spoke of the same thing, voices in their heads, whispering promises of peace through silence. I don't hear anything, Ensign Kim Doyen had said when they asked him about it. Should I be hearing something? Dr. Lim Suji, the ship's doctor, had been studying the phenomenon. She appeared on the bridge looking exhausted but excited. I think I know why we're immune, she said. Every human I've tested has the same unusual brain patterns. We're literally built differently. Different how? Minseok asked. Our ancestors modified us, she explained. There are genetic markers in our DNA that don't exist in any other species. Someone changed us, made us resistant to psychic attacks. Communication console crackled to life. A desperate voice spoke in broken English, one of the few human languages that aliens had learned. "This is Council Ship Harmony," the voice said. We are begging for help. The whispers have taken most of our crew. Please, if any humans can hear this, we surrender. We were wrong about you." Minseok looked at his crew. They were young. Most of them had never been in a real battle. But they were the only ones who could fight this enemy. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Council ship. Harmony, this is Captain Kong Minseok of the Soul's Pride. We're coming to get you." "You don't understand," the alien voice replied. "The entity is free. It has been imprisoned for 50,000 years, but the barriers are failing. It remembers Earth. It remembers what your ancestors did to it." "What did our ancestors do?" Minseok asked. "They were the only ones who could fight it," the voice explained. "They built a prison around it using their own minds as locks. But the locks are breaking. The entity wants revenge." The ship's sensors detected something massive. Approaching. On the screen, space began to ripple like water. Something was coming through that didn't belong in normal reality. "All crew, battle stations," Minseok announced. "Prepare for contact with hostile entity." "Sir," called Navigator Park Ji-woo, "how do we fight something that isn't really there before?" Minseok could answer. The thing arrived. It wasn't a ship or a creature. It was a presence that filled the space around them. The alien vessels in the area immediately went silent, their crews overwhelmed by whispers that promised an end to all pain and struggle. But the Soul's Pride continued to function normally. "It can't touch us," Dr. Lim said in wonder. Like a safe zone in the middle of a storm. The communications channel filled with alien voices, all speaking at once. Species that had quarantined Earth were now begging for human help. The Galactic Council was in chaos as member worlds fell. Silent, one by one, "Captain," came a transmission from Earth. "This is Admiral Go Yun-ha. We're launching every ship we have. The President has authorized the first fleet to enter galactic space." Admiral Minseok replied, "We're dealing with something that can take over minds. Our crews seem to be immune, but we don't know how long that will last." "Then we better work fast," Admiral Go said. "Intelligence reports that the entity is heading for populated worlds. If it reaches the core systems, billions will die." The Soul's Pride began moving toward the nearest alien colony, following the path of destruction. Behind them, more human ships were arriving. Cargo vessels, military cruisers, even civilian transports. Every ship that could fly was joining the fight. "Sir," reported Oyuna, "we're receiving a message from the entity itself. It's trying to communicate." The voice that came through the speakers was like the sound of dying stars. It spoke in perfect English, which somehow made it even more terrifying. "Children of the Silencers," it whispered, "you cannot run forever. Your ancestors bound me, but I am free now. I will have my revenge on every thinking mind in this galaxy." "If we stop you first," Minseok said. The thing laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think you can fight me? I am the silence between thoughts. I am the peace that comes when the struggle ends. Your ancestors knew this truth. Soon, you will remember it too." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in silence. But Minseok looked at his crew and felt something his ancestors had left. Him the absolute certainty that some things were worth fighting for. "Take us to the core," he ordered. "It's time to finish what our family started." Admiral Go Yun-ha stood on the bridge of the flagship Incheon, watching the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Through the massive viewports, she could see thousands of human ships spread across space like stars against the darkness. Each vessel carried volunteers who knew they might never see Earth again. "Admiral," reported Captain Song Joon-ho from his destroyer on the outer edge of the formation, "the entity is moving toward the Centauri colonies. Estimated time to contact, 6 hours. 6 hours to save 12 billion alien lives. 6 hours to prove that humanity deserved to exist." The entity was like nothing they had ever faced. It wasn't a ship or a creature, it was a living nightmare that existed in the spaces between thoughts. Where it went, civilizations fell silent, not destroyed, just empty. Billions of minds stopping all at once like someone had turned off a switch. All ships, maintain formation, Yunha ordered. Remember, we're not trying to kill this thing, trying to cage it. Dr. Park Seongwa, Earth's leading expert on the entity, stood beside her command chair. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. The prison our ancestors built was made of human consciousness, he explained. Every person who volunteered became a living lock. The entity couldn't break free because it couldn't understand how human minds work. And now? Yunha asked. Now we have to rebuild that prison, he said. But this time, we know what we're doing. The plan was simple and terrible. Human ships would spread across the galaxy, each one carrying crews who would volunteer to become permanent guardians. They would link their minds together, creating zones of absolute silence where the entity couldn't exist. It's not death, Dr. Park had explained to the volunteers. It's more like eternal duty. Your consciousness will become part of the cage that keeps this thing trapped. Every person on every ship had volunteered. There had been no shortage of people willing to sacrifice themselves to protect the galaxy. Contact in 30 minutes. Announced Navigator Lee Soo-young through the viewports. Space began to change. Reality twisted and bent as the entity approached. Stars flickered and went out. The darkness between them filled with whispers that promised peace through silence. Alien vessels, fall back, Yuna ordered. This is a human-only operation from here on out. The alien ships that had been following at a safe distance immediately turned and ran. They couldn't get close to the entity without losing their minds. Only humans could face it directly. Admiral called Communications Officer Kim Jaeon. We're receiving a transmission from the entity. It wants to talk. The voice that came through the speakers was older than civilizations. It spoke in perfect Korean, which somehow made it more terrifying. Children of my ancient enemies, it whispered, you think you can cage me again? I have learned much in my prison. I know your weaknesses now. We're not our ancestors, Yuna replied. We're stronger than they were, are you? The entity asked. They at least understood what they were fighting. You stumble around in ignorance, pretending to be heroes? The entity's presence washed over the human fleet like a wave of despair on alien ships. Crews would have collapsed immediately. But the humans felt only a slight headache, like listening to music played too loud. You cannot touch us, Yunha said. We were made to fight you. Made? Yes, the entity agreed. But do you know what you were made from? Do you know what your ancestors sacrificed to create you? Oh. Images flooded the communication channels, memories from 50,000 years ago. The final battle between the entity and the alliance of species that had fought it. The terrible price of victory. They took volunteers, the entity whispered. Millions of them. They changed them, turned them into living weapons. The process killed most of them. Survivors became your ancestors. So what? Yuna asked. They did what they had to do. They turned their own children into soldiers, the entity said. Every human alive today is a weapon that was pointed at me. You have no choice in this fight. You were born to be my prisoners. You're wrong, Yuna said. We choose to fight you. Not because we have to, but because it's right. The entity laughed, a sound like dying suns. Then let us see how long your righteousness lasts. The final battle began. The entity attacked with everything it had, trying to overwhelm the human fleet with waves of psychic energy. But everywhere the humans went, silence followed. They created pockets of absolute quiet where the entity couldn't exist. It's working. Dr. Park reported, the entity is being pushed back. But Yuna could see the cost. One by one, human ships were going dark as their crews linked their minds together to form the prison. They weren't dying, but they were becoming something else. Something that would watch and wait for eternity. All ships, final positions, she ordered. Prepare for lockdown. The human fleet spread across the galaxy like a net. From the outer rim to the galactic core, volunteers took their posts. Each ship became a guard tower in an invisible prison that would contain the entity forever. Admiral called Captain Song from his distant position. "We're ready to begin the binding." Yunha looked out at the stars one last time. Soon, she would join the Eternal Watch. Earth would be safe, and so would the galaxy. But the price was everything. "Execute the binding," she ordered. Across space, human consciousness linked together. The entity screamed as the cage closed around it, but its voice was already fading. The whispers in the void grew quiet. In the silence that followed, alien civilizations began to send new messages. Not warnings about Earth, but thanks. The name of humanity spread across the galaxy, spoken with gratitude for the children of Earth who had chosen to become guardians of the peace. The whispers were gone, but the watch would never end.